I think you have to think, like, among the considerations, that this was an inside job. I mean, these people knew what they were doing.
It's early Sunday morning in Paris, the city of light, art, and untouchable prestige. Tourists are lining up outside the Louvre, the world's most famous museum, the same place that guards the Mona Lisa behind bulletproof glass. But that morning, no one realized that the Louvre itself was about to become the victim. A plain white utility truck rolls up quietly to a side entrance. 4 men step out wearing orange safety vests, construction boots, and helmets, blending in like ordinary workers. To anyone watching, it looks like maintenance work. But within minutes, they're up on the museum's second floor, standing in front of one of France's most guarded treasures, the French crown jewels. What happens next looks like a scene straight out of Ocean's 11. The men move fast, too fast. They break through the glass cases, grab handfuls of royal diamonds and emeralds, and disappear down the stairs before the alarm even finishes its first ring. In just under 7 minutes, they vanish into the Paris streets, leaving behind nothing but shattered glass, a lift truck, and a trail of humiliation for France's most famous institution. The world wakes up to chaos. News outlets call it a cultural tragedy and the heist of the decade. Officials are in full panic mode. How could the Louvre, a fortress of art and security, want to be outsmarted so easily? But while the headlines are crying for justice, one voice is cutting through the noise with razor-sharp irony. Katt Williams. The comedian who's made a career out of mixing truth with humor didn't see a tragedy. He saw a full-circle moment. Because for Katt, the real robbery didn't happen last Sunday. It's been happening for hundreds of years inside those same marble walls. Before we dive into the history, let's slow down and understand what went down that morning. It wasn't a random hit. This was a masterclass in precision. 4 suspects, all in their 30s or 40s, used fake construction credentials to get near the museum. They had a lift truck ready, specialized tools, and exact timing. Within minutes, they were in and out, targeting the most valuable cases on the second floor, the French crown jewels that once belonged to royalty. Inside those cases were 9 priceless artifacts: diamond-encrusted tiaras, emerald necklaces, sapphire earrings, golden brooches, even the crown of Empress Eugénie, Napoleon III's wife. Pieces that carried not just financial value, but national symbolism. When French authorities arrived, the thieves were already gone. The lift truck was left behind, its engine still warm, a faint smell of burnt rubber in the air. They even tried to torch the vehicle, but a museum worker spotted the smoke and stopped it just in time. The whole operation lasted less than 7 minutes. 7 minutes that humiliated a global superpower of art and culture. And as the French media treated it like a national disaster, other voices around the world saw something poetic. Because while France mourned its missing jewels, millions of people couldn't help but think about the irony. That the same country crying about stolen treasures had spent centuries stealing treasures from everyone else. And that's exactly where Katt Williams' perspective came in. Katt Williams isn't known for biting his tongue. He's known for biting back. At hypocrisy, at double standards, and especially at the people who think they can control the narrative. When the Louvre heist hit the headlines, Katt didn't play the sympathy card. He didn't talk about the thieves. He didn't talk about the jewels. He talked about history, the kind of history that gets polished, rewritten, and sold back to the people it was stolen from. He said, "Don't ask me to be mad because somebody finally robbed the robbers." And in that one sentence, he summed up what a lot of people have been thinking for generations. To Katt, this wasn't about theft. It was about truth. About how Europe, and specifically countries like France and Britain, built their reputations as cultural leaders on foundations of robbery. The Louvre, the British Museum, the Vatican. They've all become vaults of stolen history, filled with artifacts from Africa, Asia, and South America. And now the tables had turned. Katt pointed out the bitter irony. You've spent centuries looting entire continents, but the moment somebody takes something from you, suddenly it's an outrage. But it went even deeper than that. Katt used this moment to remind the world of a larger pattern. That colonial powers never really gave back what they stole. Instead, they called it preservation. He asked the uncomfortable question nobody else would. How can you preserve something you stole? And once you peel back that question, the heist at the Louvre stops looking like a random crime. and starts looking like a reflection of the very system it represents. For centuries, Europe has been building its museums on stolen foundations. Every conquest, every invasion, every expedition had one thing in common. They never left empty-handed. The British took from India and Nigeria. The French took from Egypt, Mali, and Madagascar. The Belgians took from the Congo. And when they were done, they displayed those items behind glass and called them universal heritage. It's one of the greatest public relations tricks in human history. Katt's commentary hits hard because it exposes how deep the theft goes, not just in gold or jewels, but in identity. He said it himself. Black people have lost their identity, but our oppressors haven't lost our identity. He's not just talking about history books. He's talking about literal faces. When colonizers defaced the statues of African pharaohs, breaking off their noses and lips, it wasn't random vandalism. It was strategic erasure. Katt explained it simply. Why would someone vandalize a whole statue but only damage the nose? Because that's the feature that told the truth about who that person really was. Without that feature, anyone could claim the legacy. Anyone could rewrite the narrative. That's how entire civilizations were whitened, renamed, and reframed, and that's why, when France cries over stolen jewels, it rings hollow to those who know what was taken centuries before, because this isn't new, it's a cycle repeating itself. When France invaded Egypt in the late 1700s under Napoleon, they called it a scientific expedition. But behind that word was a cover for looting. French soldiers raided tombs, dug up burial sites, and stole sarcophagi, mummies, and priceless relics that had been untouched for thousands of years. They shipped them back to Paris as souvenirs of conquest. That's how the Louvre's Egyptian collection was born. Not from trade, not from generosity, from theft. If you walk through the Louvre's Egyptian galleries today, you'll see mummies, golden masks, and ancient statues. But what you're really seeing are fragments of a civilization ripped apart, and the defacement Katt talked about. The missing noses, the chipped lips, the altered skin tones. They're all physical proof of how colonizers tried to erase African identity from world history. When you destroy the face, you destroy recognition. When you remove the roots, you control the narrative. Katt Williams connected that to modern culture. You can't convince people they have no history unless you've already stolen it from them. That's exactly what France did, not just in Egypt, but across Africa. From Senegal to Mali, from Madagascar to Algeria, France plundered sacred art and spiritual objects, rebranding them as world treasures. Today, over 70,000 African artifacts sit in French museums. They call it heritage. But heritage for who? In 2017, France's President Emmanuel Macron stood on stage and said returning African art was his moral priority. He even commissioned a detailed report that revealed something shocking. Nearly 90% of Africa's cultural heritage is located outside of Africa, sitting in European museums and private collections. That should have been a wake-up call. But years later, only a handful of items have been returned. The rest are still collecting dust under European spotlights, guarded by alarms and lawyers. That's why Katt Williams' message resonates, because every time Europe calls a theft preservation, they're rewriting the language of ownership. When they steal, it's for history. When someone takes from them, it's a crime. That's the double standard, that's the hypocrisy. And the Louvre heist forced the world to face it, because suddenly the guardians of art became the victims of the same story they built. For generations, these museums have glamorized conquest. They've built national pride around plundered artifacts and called it education. But the second the tables turned, it became organized crime. And maybe it was, but for many watching, and especially those who know the history, it also felt like poetic justice. 9 jewels missing from the Louvre caused an international meltdown. France called it a cultural wound. But what about the millions of artifacts taken from Africa, Asia, and the Americas? Where's the outrage for those? That's the question Katt Williams wanted people to think about. Because if the theft of 9 jewels can shake a nation, what should the theft of entire civilizations mean? The Louvre will probably get its jewels back one day. Insurance will pay out, investigators will chase leads, and history will move on. But Africa's treasures? Egypt's artifacts? The Benin bronzes? They've been gone for centuries, displayed, renamed, and sold back to the world as art. So who really owns history? Who decides what's sacred and what's property? Maybe this heist wasn't about greed at all. Maybe it was a reflection, a mirror held up to the same institutions that have been stealing for centuries. Katt wasn't celebrating the crime. He was exposing the hypocrisy behind the outrage. Because when the world's biggest thieves finally get a taste of their own medicine, suddenly everyone remembers what morality sounds like. The truth is, the Louvre's missing jewels aren't the tragedy. The tragedy is that the real thieves are still called curators. And as the French government vows to tighten security, maybe the world should start asking a different question. Not, who stole from the Louvre, but who did the Louvre steal from first? So what do you think? Was this just another robbery? Or was it a reflection of centuries of hidden payback? Should Europe finally return what it took? Or will it take more moments like this before the message really hits home? Because maybe, just maybe, history isn't repeating itself, that's reclaiming itself.